key research areas that I'll be talking about, which have actually been talked about in the last few years in the context of neuroplasticity and also therefore their linkage to learning and development. The first one, which is pretty well known now, is Carol Dweck's theory of growth mindset. And essential takeaways from this research of Carol Dweck is that neuroplasticity can happen at any age. So it dismantles the older belief that largely the brain stopped being plastic beyond the age of 11 or 12. The second takeaway from this theory is that if people are open to fail, open to learn, and open to taking feedback from situations as well as from other people, that drives neuroplasticity. So she compares it with fixed mindset people who would usually be defensive, who would like to justify, who would like to repeat the patterns of success of the past to create the success for the future. And as opposed to fixed mindset people, she says the growth mindset people are more open to trying out new things, more open to venturing into areas where they know there's a good chance of failing, and yet take it as a joyful experience of feedback and processing. The third insight from this research is that the master process behind learning is what eventually we need to master. So it is not so much about learning in a particular area like data analytics or sports or music or management or anything. It is that can we actually break down the whole process of learning, the inner experiences that we have while learning anything, and then apply that template to any new area of learning. So this is one research that is relevant. The second research I'm going to talk about is done by one of my batchmates from IIT Delhi, Dr. Pawan Sinha. He's currently professor at MIT, and for decades he has done, operations and post-operation therapy for visually impaired people, including people who are congenitally visually impaired. What he discovered in his post-therapy experience, and he also used a lot of brain mapping and scanning during these post-therapy sessions, was as follows: that eyesight did not come back the moment the patient was operated upon to repair the visual system. It took a few weeks or few months of post-operative therapy, which actually involved stimulating the visual center of the brain through taking the patient through different textures, shapes, and colors. However, to his surprise, what he discovered was that as much as the sensory center of the brain was getting activated through post-operative therapy, somehow other centers of the brain also started getting activated. When I asked him once, so Pawan, is there a specific pattern of which centers get activated? He said, no, that is the biggest surprise, that from person to person, which centers of brain get activated as you are stimulating the visual center is highly unpredictable and random. But yes, overall, brain is making new connections and becoming bigger or more plastic or more capable. The third thing, which is sort of a reverse of Dr. Pawan Sinha's research, is what is called as cross-modal neuroplasticity. And this links up to people who have had hearing impairment or visual impairment from birth. And what has been found is that the center connected to the particular sense which is impaired doesn't go inactive in these people. And what happens is that the other senses which are functioning normally, they somehow tend to creep into this particular center. And therefore, in a layman's language, what happens is if a visually impaired person over the years starts having his visual area in the brain crept into by, say, hearing sense or touching sense, his hearing or touching sense actually becomes even more active than a usual person. So what this research on cross-modal neuroplasticity says is that our sensory centers are highly interconnected and capable of influencing each other. So these are the three research areas that give us huge insights about learning and development in terms of future. Once we look at these research areas and combine the three, the growth mindset theory, the neuroplasticity research discovered from the post-operative therapy of visually impaired and the cross-modal neuroplasticity research, it says three, four things. First thing it says is that the future of learning will belong to those people who truly believe that they can be lifelong learners. So, in a way, your brain will be more plastic if it is coming from a belief system that I can be a learner, and such people would remove all the phobias and barriers to learning. The second thing these research areas are pointing towards is that the more you learn from multisensory sources and from a diverse set of activities, the more plastic your brain will be. And therefore, in future, learners would not bother to directly link the source of learning to their immediate profession or work or immediate goals to be achieved. They would operate out of a general faith that whatever I learn from wherever, eventually it will make my brain grow, and eventually that grown brain will help me in my work also. So, kind of indirect learning experiences, seemingly unrelated sources of learning, will be the future of learning. The third thing which these researchers are pointing towards is that learn for the sake of learning, which means in future, learning will be celebrated not just as a process to help you become more productive, more relevant, more successful, but as an end in itself. Almost like all the adults in the world are being asked to become like children who don't learn with an objective. They just learn out of an innocent curiosity and the sheer joy of learning. So, in layman's terms, these very heavy researchers are actually pointing towards these things for the individuals. Another thing that I would like to say here is that learners of the future will be able to draw parallels of learning from one activity and the application of that learning into 10 other areas. So that transferability of learning will be the hallmark of the learners of future. Interesting thing that I have discovered is that whatever research and theory applies to individuals can be parallelly applied equally effectively to organizations. So when I'm asked, okay, so what are the insights of these cutting edge researches for organizations? Here are a few insights that I normally share. And these are built on evidences from great learning organizations of the recent past as well as of a slightly distant past. First is that organizations of the future would build a culture which celebrates learning, failure, reflection, and trying for the sake of trying. I've been fortunate enough to work in one such organization before I started out as a consultant 2.5 decades back. 3M, what a learning organization. They reward well-meaning failures. They reward risk-taking. If at all anything is punished in 3M, it is not trying. Failing is never punished. A bad idea is never punished. Even a bad product or a bad technology is not punished. So that's the future of learning organizations. The second thing that I think these researchers are pointing towards is that the future organizations will provide multisensory, diverse learning stimulation to its people. So we can expect the future learning organizations and workspaces to be more colorful, more playful, more randomly stimulating, without bothering to establish the direct correlation of those learning stimulations to people's work or organizations' business models. And the third thing that I'm anticipating in the future learning organizations is that they will actually work to simplify areas of knowledge for their people. One of the things which has been discovered is that what scares people from venturing into a new field of learning is not the knowledge, but the jargon. And therefore, people are now mastering the art of bringing complex or seemingly difficult fields of knowledge to a layperson in a simplified language, having faith that basic learning ability exists in every mind and no field of knowledge is impossible or alien to any mind, as long as you can remove the cloud of jargon. So these are the three things that I see as future of learning in organizational context. the examples, when Carol Dweck's growth mindset theory was brought to the world was of this uh, person, Joshua Waitzkin. This person was actually a budding chess player, and by the age of around late teens or 20, he became an international master and then was well on his way to becoming grandmaster. So people predictably expected him to now spend the rest of his life being a chess champion and maybe one day become a chess coach or whatever. And suddenly, to the shock of his admirers, fans, friends, family, he dropped the game of chess altogether and decided to enroll into martial arts, Tai Chi to be specific. People told him, why are you doing this? You are venturing into an area where you are an upstart and people maybe years younger to you will beat the hell out of you in the arena. So why take that risk? But something told him that, no, I've had enough of chess. I have mastered the whole process of chess. So from hereafter, I can only vertically or incrementally grow in that area. Therefore, he wanted to try something new. And within 6 months of enrolling into martial arts, he became a black belt in this area and went on to win tournaments. So people now expected him to continue with this for a few years, but suddenly he dropped that also. And today he's writing books, he's consulting organizations and coaching individuals on the overall art of learning. What he discovered in this experience, which is a huge validation of growth mindset theory, is that by learning from different areas, I actually got on top of the process of learning itself. Now I have a template of learning which can be applied to any field of knowledge, whether it's a new language, new piece of music, new art form, etc., etc. This is one phenomenal example. At an organizational level, one of the best examples is the Fujifilm versus Kodak case study, which is now very well known. The reason Kodak, which was a leader about 2 decades back, went down and actually went bust is because they vertically tried to learn how consumer photography was changing from film-based cameras to digital cameras. As opposed to them, what Fujifilm did was it went into the core of what it had learned and mastered over a century of making film-based cameras. And it discovered certain core technologies like coating nano layers of chemicals like collagen and gelatin, etc., on the films, like basic imaging technology and plasma state in highly sensitive, controlled conditions of temperature and moisture. And what they did was then they scanned the whole market around them, saying, okay, these are three technologies that we mastered. What are the new applications emerging in the world for these technologies? And lo and behold, the Fujifilm of today is not recognizable for the customers of Fujifilm of 2 decades back. Whereas it continues to be a leader in the areas it emerged into, and not only a leader, but a pioneer. So much so that one of the growth areas for Fujifilm today is anti-aging cosmetics. How could anybody correlate anti-aging cosmetics to the technologies which were drawn out of making film-based cameras? So this is a great example of an organization which decided to reinvent itself by boldly going deeper into what they had and equally boldly shedding what was becoming irrelevant. So I think these two examples at individual level and organizational level can throw a lot of light on how the future of learning will emerge. That I would say for the individuals in light of this cutting edge research on future of learning is that open up your mind to more stimulation. Go and play the game of learning. Don't bother about translating that learning into your work immediately or some immediate reward. Have faith that that learning will immediately ultimately make your brain plastic and help you at your workplace also. So make an adventure out of learning any new skill. Keep a goal for yourself every year or two, saying, okay, these are 2, 3 areas I'm going to venture into, which I may be totally unaware of, which I may never have tried in the past. For example, for myself, last year I kept 3 goals. I'd like to learn cooking, like to learn poetry across 2 or 3 languages. I would also like to learn chess. And in all these three areas, I started almost from scratch. What I discovered after 6 to 8 months of learning these areas is that not only did I become far more proficient in these areas than I could have ever imagined, but they actually started impacting my overall work as a consultant as well. So that's one recommendation. The second recommendation I would give to the learners of the future is that always try and process the learning experience out of any activity, irrespective of whether it's a failed experience or a successful experience. Draw a template of what you learned and then imagine the areas in which that template can be applied. So this kind of an imagining, reimagining, connecting the dots, making a process out of experience, it will set you into this journey. And third thing I would say is invest. Invest. Don't wait for organizations to pay for your learning. Invest yourself in monetary or non-monetary terms. So, like the old saying is coming back in the form of new cutting edge research, all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. I think that's where the future is. Don't be all work and don't be just some limited play. Widen your horizon of play. As far as organizations are concerned, uh, my suggestion to them would be that build a culture which celebrates failure, build a culture which celebrates trying out new ideas, build a culture where people are able to share their learnings in small groups or larger groups, build a culture where people actually feel rewarded for having tried out and learned something and shared those learnings with uh, fellow humans. Second thing is make your workplace, whether digital or real, much more colorful, much more stimulating, and keep thinking of new ways every now and then to bring out multi-sensory stimulation to your people. 3M is a great example in this context also. They keep dismantling structures, divisions, roles, designations every now and then. And a lot of people have asked them, why do you do that? Why do you fiddle with something which is already working? And the answer they say is just like that. But the deeper thought behind that, just like that approach, is that we don't want any patterns to set in our people. So the same way I'll suggest for organizations, keep changing even the audio-visual environment of your workplace every 6 months to 1 year, and apply all the creativity that you have at your disposal to bring in more and more learning experiences, music, art, cooking, sports, or any other kinds of learning that you can bring. So that's what I would say.